Hello friends, my name is Abhay Kumar and I am today going to talk about a very important issue, and my discussions will be centered around a revolutionary personality, a person who had suffered a lot in Indian society that is governed by the rules of the caste. He was a prolific writer, poet, but sadly he died very young. Yes, I am referring to none other than Omprakash Valmiki. Friends, Omprakash Valmiki is perhaps the most respected Dalit writer, and he is also a revolutionary poet, and he wrote several short stories that brought to the center the questions of caste exploitations or discrimination based on caste. Sometimes it is not always appropriate to call a person Dalit writer. He was as good as any mainstream writer, and as far as his perspective is concerned, his politics is concerned, he was far ahead than them. Omprakash Valmiki was born on June 30th, 1950, and he died on November 17, 2013. In India and elsewhere also, people are celebrating and observing his birth anniversary. Omprakash Valmiki, renowned Indian writer and poet who wrote from Dalit consciousness, and his work is being discussed and debated. In this series, I have also tried to do a small discussion here on his very important work. His book Dalit Sahitya Ka Saundarya Shastra, that is Aesthetics of Dalit Literature, is taught at several universities and colleges. It is not very fat book. It has some 119 to 20 pages, and you can read this book in a short period. This book is very important because it will give you idea about what is Dalit literature, and while discussing the features of Dalit literature, it also talks about Indian society and different debates and controversies related to it. So I just want to start giving you a brief introduction to this work, and I request all of you to read it because no discussion can be complete. You should go and find the book, and you should read it, and you should see what is there for you. As far as Omprakash Valmiki is concerned, he is also known for his autobiography Juthan, and which is a autobiography, and that portrays how a person born in Dalit community is facing exploitation and discrimination every day, every minute, and how that person is treated worse than animal in many cases. Apart from Jutan, I think he has also had 3 collections of poetry, and this book, which is some sort of criticism on literature, and it says, it guides young generations that what is Dalit literature and what is not Dalit literature. Jutan, as I have told you, has been translated into English also, and it has been widely appreciated. At one place, Omprakash Valmiki has been introduced as Omprakash Valmiki is the author of 2 collections of poetry and one of short stories. As editor and publisher of numerous magazines, he has played a vital role in the propagation of Dalit literature. So this is how Columbia Press has introduced him. So without doing anything else, let me start doing a brief survey of his work. Friends, first of all, you should know what is the title of the book. The title of the book is Dalit Sahitya Ka Sundar Sas, that is Aesthetics of Dalit Literature. It was printed by an Indian publisher, Radha Krishna, and the edition which I am going to use here in this discussion is that of 2017. Friends, before he enters the first chapter, in introduction, Omprakash Valmiki takes up the central question of Dalit literature, that is experience, the debate about experience. That debate is not only limited to Dalit literature, it is also being debated in feminist circle also, and it is also an issue as far as anti-race writing is concerned. The issue is, who is the legitimate voice to write about the suffering? For example, can anybody who has learned the method and technique will be able to portray and express the feeling of the oppressed, or the oppressed has got only the legitimate voice to talk about their own pain? So this is very central question as far as Dalit literature is concerned. And Omprakash Valmiki thinks that a person who had suffered a lot, that person has genuine experience, and that person can write the suffering. And he takes up the debate with a well-known Hindi writer, Kasinath Singh. And in one seminar where Kasinath Singh is there, he stood up and he said that to write about horse, a writer should not become horse. So Kasinath Singh is questioning that anybody who has learned the technique, who is sensitive, can write about the problem of the person who has suffered it. But Omprakash Valmiki disagrees with him, and he says that a writer can write about how the horse appears, how the horse looks like, what are the external features of horse. The writer will also be able to describe the horse from the outside. But when the horse has done hard work, whole through the day, and when he is not treated well by the master, and in the evening when the horse comes back and when horse feels the pain, that pain cannot be understood by the writer who is looking at the horse from the outside. So the suffering and the pain of the horse can only be expressed by the horse. So this is very important issue which Omprakash Valmiki takes up in the very first page of this book, Dalit Sahitya Ka Saundar Shastra. And I find it that Dalit literature is very much, I think most of writers who are practitioners of Dalit literature, they stress, they underscore this point that the suffering is very important. The man who has suffered has got the legitimate right to write about this issue. So the experience debate is also very central. Now from that I will now discuss chapter number 1, and this chapter is called Dalit Sahitya Ki Avdharna, the concept of Dalit literature. And here he is giving the definitions of Dalit literature, that Dalit is one who has been exploited, who has been suppressed, who has been crushed, and Dalit is one whose downfall has been triggered by those who are ruling the society. So I want to quote 3 and 4 lines which is the definitions of Dalit. दलित शब्द का अर्थ है जिसका दलन और दमन हुआ है, दबाया गया है, उत्पीड़ित है, शोषित है, सताया गया है, गिराया हुआ है, उपेक्षित है, घृणित है, रौंदा हुआ है, मसला हुआ है, कुचला हुआ है, विनिष्ट है, मर्दित है, पस्त हिम्मत, हतोत्साहित, वंचित आदि. So he is using a number of characteristics. One of them is suppressed, crushed, when the person who is lacking confidence because of the circumstances, because of society, that person who has been ignored. So these are the features of who is a Dalit. Now he is also quoting Rajendra Yadav, who is a big writer, I think, and who gave a lot of space to young scholars like Omprakash Valmiki to write. And Rajendra Yadav was the man who upheld, I think, Dalit and Bahujan ideology. So he is quoting Rajendra Yadav and saying that Rajendra Yadav said that Dalit literature or the term Dalit also includes women. So the women who are suffering in the society, they are also Dalit. So Rajendra Yadav was in favor of including women to the category of Dalits. Now from that, Omprakash Valmiki says that Dalit literature is a mass literature, and it is a literature of action, and it is a protest against feudal system. It is a literature of revolt. So these are very important points, that it is a mass literature, it is a literature of the actions. For example, the earlier period of Hindi literature was too much busy with describing war and describing beauty, and also writing praises for, let's say, the rulers. But here Omprakash Valmiki is saying that Dalit Sahitya is basically a literature for the change. Its language will be that of the people, and it will be written for people. So it is not he is not supporting those writers who talk about metaphysical things, supernatural things, those who talk about the stories of the king and the queen and the fairy tales. No, his concern is to talk about everyday problem. From that, he says that Dalit literature arose in after 1970s, when a new generations of Dalit got educated and they started writing. Friends, I want to add something here, that what is the origin of Dalit literature, what is the history of Dalit literature. There is not one view. Some people try to trace its origin to the legacy of Ambedkar, Phule, Periyar, Kabir, and also Mahatma Buddha, Lord Buddha. On the other hand, some scholars say that in the 1920s, some writers in Uttar Pradesh, they started writing some pamphlet, and they were influenced by social justice ideology. So that was the beginning of Dalit literature. But a large number of scholars are tracing the origin of Dalit literature in the decades of 1980s in Hindi literature, when what Omprakash Valmiki is referring here, that after the independence and after the introductions of reservations, a very small group of Dalit scholars, they got educated and they started writing, and with that the whole debate got changed. So in the first chapter, Omprakash Valmiki is basically talking about the definitions, and he is saying that it is a mass literature, it is a literature of actions. And now Dalit literature was earlier limited to poetry and what should I say, Atma Katha, that is autobiography and stories. But Dalit writers are also taking up different genres. For example, they are writing stories, they are writing novels, they are writing analysis, they are into journalism, then autobiography, memoir, literary commentaries, and also drama. So you could see that now it has the Dalit literature has taking up other genres as well. So then in the next chapter, that is known as Dalit Sahitya ki Prasangikta, the relevance of Dalit literature, he is saying, Omprakash Valmiki is saying that Dalit literature is for the freedom of the humanity, for equality, and for fraternity. So the three ideas are very important: fraternity, humanity, and freedom. And Dalit literature is for taking up the issue of the human suffering, and it fights for the liberation of the people. It is some kind of revolutionary activities, and it attacks all kinds of dominance prevalent or rooted in society. Another chapter which is very important, that is called Dalit Chetana. Dalit Chetana, what is Dalit consciousness? And here Omprakash Valmiki is saying that Dalit Chetana is very important, and he is saying that a writer must ask, who am I, what is my identity, and he should try to celebrate his identity rather than feeling, what should I say, feeling ashamed of his identity. And he is talking about taking up challenges, and on page number 31 he is giving some important points, some important features of this Dalit consciousness. And he is saying that Dalit consciousness is influenced by Ambedkar philosophy, the philosophy of liberation and freedom. It is also influenced by Buddha ideology, his Buddha rejections of God, and then Buddha's upholding of scientific temper, and Buddha's rejections of superstitions and rituals. So he is saying that the Dalit literature should feel influenced, should take up the traditions of Buddha, and Dalit literature is also against Varn Vyavastha, that is four-fold system, that is and caste system. It is also against sectarian conflict, and in India, Hindus and Muslims dispute is a big issue for the political parties, and out of their interest, for their interest, they keep putting one community against another community. But he is saying that a Dalit is a person who believes in Hindu-Muslims unity. They do not believe in communal conflict, and he is saying that Dalit literature is for bhaichara, that is fraternity, it is for freedom, it is for the social justice, it is for the change in the society, it is against capitalism, it is against feudalism, it is against Brahmanism, it is against what should I say, it is against authoritarianism. And the Dalit literature also rejects the Brahmanical tradition in Hindi literature, and he says that Ramchandra Shukla, who is a big figure in Hindi literature, who wrote history of Hindi literature from the Brahmanical point of view, he is also rejecting that Ramchandra Shukla parampara, that tradition. And he is saying, Omprakash Valmiki is saying that Dalit literature is also the rejection of old, what should I say, that old aesthetics, the traditional aesthetics. It is for establishment of the new aesthetics, that is based on equality, fraternity, and liberty. Dalit literature works for making a society caste-free, class-free, and it is against discrimination based on language and sex. So friends, these are some of the features of Dalit literature which I have given you from Omprakash Valmiki's book. I think, as I have told you, that you should read this book on your own, and you should try to find what is there in this book. Friends, I want to tell you that when I have read this book, I also had some disagreement, which I also want to share with you, or maybe that my comment on this book. At least 2 points I want to say here. The first is that when I have read this book, I have found that Omprakash Valmiki could have taken up the gender aspect much more than what he has done. In this book, the contribution of women writer and those which is written from that feminist point of view, that discussion I have found in this book is not much. It could have been incorporated more. And the second point is that while discussing the issues, he has not much dealt with, let's say, the classical sources and the canonical sources. For example, at one place he gave reference to Ramchandra Shukla, who is a big name in Hindi literature, but I was expecting him to critique writing of the Shukla. So that kind of very critical engagement with important text, the canonical text that should be critiqued, is not there in this book. Maybe that he has written this book for the general reader. This is what I felt after reading this book. But despite these 2 points, I'm greatly inspired by this book, and I think this book is being read by a large number of people, and you should also read it. And those readers, I think, who cannot read Hindi, I think this book should also be translated in English. I don't know that whether it has been translated or not. It has not passed, the English translation has not passed through my knowledge. So now I want to pay my tribute to Omprakash Valmiki, and I want to end this discussion by reciting his very revolutionary poem. This poem is about the suffering of a Dalit who is mazdoor, who is a laborer, and who is working all the time, and but he owns nothing. For example, he can only survive when he continues to work, and much more than that he gets nothing. And all means of productions, tools, lands, pond, everything is controlled by the upper caste people. So this poem is known as Thakur Ka Kuan. The Thakur is, I think, the landlord in the village, and the Kuan is the well. So he is using the symbol of the Thakur Ka Kuan, that the well of the landlord, the upper caste in the village, and he says that everything is owned by the Thakur, the upper caste, and we Dalits and Mazdoors and workers, we have nothing. We have no share in this village. We have no share in this society. We have no share in this country. So this is also a big attack on that fanatic nationalism, which is also to be seen in our society also. So I want to read it out, and then our discussion will come to end. Thank you. Omprakash Valmiki, ठाकुर का कुआं। चूल्हा मिट्टी का, मिट्टी तालाब की, तालाब ठाकुर का, भूख रोटी की, रोटी बाजरे की, बाजरा खेत का, खेत ठाकुर का, बैल ठाकुर का, हल ठाकुर का, हल की मूठ पर हथेली अपनी, फसल ठाकुर की, कुआं ठाकुर का, पानी ठाकुर का, खेत खलियान ठाकुर के, गली मोहल्ले ठाकुर के, फिर अपना क्या, गांव, शहर या देश। थैंक यू।